Hey again! New mics here finally, so let's see how this goes. So, last time on Fundamental Fantasy, we discussed the idea of concepts and descriptions. This time, we're going to take a step even further back from that, and look at what brought us to that point in the first place. Now, we covered how to balance an idea, what numbers do and such, but that's only useful after you know what you want to do in the first place, so how do we get there? So, first and foremost, set goals for yourself. Not goals to reach, but goals in the sense of what the purpose of your game is. Saorsa has lots of goals, and they're clearly written out. I occasionally go back and double check them to make sure that I'm actually building stuff in accordance with the goals of the game. The reason for this is that game design is largely about making choices between two or more conflicting goals and trying to get a compromise between them. Stuff like, I want fast-paced combat and I want lots of player options are conflicting goals. Anytime you add to one, you take away from the other. It's not possible to meet both goals completely effectively because there will always be a loss between the two. However, because the goals are clearly stated, you can then decide what you want to do. In the case just presented, which is one I've had to wrangle with during Saorsa's design for quite some time now, I know that I want both of these things, and that if I have to choose between them, then I'm going to focus a little more heavily on the side of faster, streamlined combat. Having so many choices that the game grinds to a halt isn't really a fun game, but having combat where it's so streamlined and quick because you have no options at all means it isn't even really able to be defined as a game in the first place. You may as well just be watching TV if you have no capacity to alter what happens due to no choices and therefore no input. So, one of the most basic things I try to tell people over and over and over, I stress it very heavily, is to decide what do you want to do before you try to do it. In game design, that's your goals and concepts. Your goals are the strategic level. The concepts, the tactical level of planning. These are the plans by which you determine what the actual actions to be taken are. Without a goal, you won't know what you want to do. You can't form desires to fulfill if you're not even sure what informs you of what you desire. You may desire something, but it'll be vague and ill-defined. Without a well-defined desire, you can't really fulfill it. So, the absolute first thing you should ever do with your game, before you even write down a single ability or class or rule in general, is lay out the goals of what you hope to achieve with the game. As many of them as possible. Define all of it. Release as much as you can think of. Like, don't worry, you can actually go back and add more goals as you think of them. Anyway, these can be things like wanting a magic system that lets you keep casting after you run out of spells so that your mage doesn't get bored. Or a magic system that allows for versatility so that you can always have the right spell for the job as long as you know it. Things like these are goals, but they can also be conflicting goals. That's fine. It doesn't matter. Write them out anyway. That's fine. It doesn't matter. Write them out anyway. Once you have your list of goals, look them over and weight them accordingly. Which goals are things you really absolutely have to have, and which are things you just sort of think would be nice. You don't have to use numbers to weigh them, but a simple large, medium, small, or similar scale is perfectly fine. The point here is you need to know that when a conflict of goals arises, which one you're going to need to compromise more heavily on, or if you're going to split it down the middle. Alright, so you have some goals. Yay! Next off, you need to define your desires. These are a bit more tricky because they incorporate the weighted goals you just set a few moments ago. Your desire for the game looks more like, I want players to have some options, especially with martial classes, but not to the point that it excessively slows down combat. Goals are singular in nature. Desires tend to be multifaceted, and usually involve several goals coming together to form a whole. Your desires for how you want your game to be expressed are important, because it tells you very clearly what kind of mechanics to build in the first place. Your concepts you came up with are the ideas of how to actually turn your desires into gameplay. In our Saorsa example, this turned into the concept of there being a combo system in combat. You apply a basic status effect, and then you enhance or exploit that status effect, then you consume or trigger another status effect based off of such. At each stage of the combo, the player has a few simple choices to make, but the number of choices is limited, so that it doesn't really hold up the game while they think about what it is they want to do. From there, we expand the concept further in the form of actual mechanics to be implemented. Technically speaking, you could claim this as a separate step, but really I don't think it's necessary. So, an opener ability may simply apply a bleed effect. The chained ability may add more stacks of bleeding to an already bleeding target, or increase the severity level of the bleeding for all stacks, or something along those lines. Finally, the player can choose to perhaps expunge the target, cause the bleed stacks all disappear, but deal massive damage based on the stacks lost, or perhaps invoke a poison which prevents coagulation of the blood, and forcing it to keep bleeding without naturally recovering, and maybe even resisting magical healing, until the anti-coagulation is dealt with first, giving the bleed an extra layer of defense. The actual descriptions of the concepts in play will be the numeric representations of exactly what each ability does. This opener applies 1 stack of bleed and your weapon's modified slashing damage, kinda dealy for instance. In this manner, you've decided what your goals are, what you want out of those goals, how those desires are converted into concepts, and then the description of those concepts as they apply to the actual game. This all falls into the category of decide what you want to do before you try to do it. Because the more you know about what you're trying to accomplish, the more likely you are to actually accomplish it, since you can intentionally steer your designs towards such, instead of flailing about at random and hoping that somehow you magically land on something that works and that you'd even recognize it if you saw it. Far too many budding game designers make the almost always fatal error of just adding in features at random. Even many experienced designers make this mistake, especially with kickstarted campaigns. You wind up with feature creep, where you keep adding more and more neat ideas as you come up with them, but they're disjointed, so they don't make sense together. It's not some unified whole that works as part of a larger machine. It's just a bunch of random concepts sitting around with no cohesion between them, and without set goals, you don't know when you've accomplished them. Even if you got something right, you probably wouldn't even know it if you saw it. Worse than that, it means you'll probably keep adding more and more and more stuff without end. You'll blow through your budget and time constraints and never actually finish the game at all, because you won't know when you've met your goals. Therefore, you absolutely must know what it is you're trying to do. You can create mechanics with intent and purpose, where they serve a purpose-based function to your game that furthers your goals and matches your desires. If you don't do this step, you're basically going to wind up with a mess. A pile of disjointed pieces that don't really fit together all that well. Game design's a lot like world design in that. If you start at the bottom and work your way up, it naturally progresses in a logical manner. You don't really have to sit around wondering what to do, because you already know what it is you want to do, and the previous steps you performed lead you right to where you want to go. It is quite literally the evolution of an idea over time, where it sprouts multiple options based on a need, and then most of them are weeded out as they fail to meet that need, while other options that meet that need flourish and proliferate, growing more effective and specialized over time. Kinda like how evolution works, hence the term. Point is, pre-planning your overarching goals and then using those to actually build the plans of what you want to do, and then actually constructing what's planned just makes it a ton easier, more effective, and more efficient. Anyway, there's not much more that I can say on the matter short of giving more examples, reiterating myself, and just coming up at the same points from more directions. All you really need to know is to figure out what you want to do before you do it. This has just been a more intrinsic breakdown of exactly how to do that is all. So, with that, I'm out. I'll see you next time.